Constantly think about how you can do things better. Process automation is as much about gaining efficiency as it is creating innovation. There is no better opportunity during this great shutdown than to innovate. And I'm excited to show you today how to do that. We will go over a few ways your organization can use eBuilder's process module to create automation. And make sure to stick around because at the end, we have an exciting announcement. Hint, it has to do with process automation. With that, I'm honored to introduce to you today your trainers, Dan Edge and Paulina Zawitowska. Take it away, Dan.
Thanks, Avi. Before I begin, I'd like to kick us off with a quote from Bill Gates. He says, "I choose a lazy person to do a hard job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it." And I like this quote because it goes with the theme of process automation. Let the system do the work so we can increase your team's productivity. So let's get started. First off, what is the processes module? I'm sure many of you already know this. In its simplest form, processes are used to route information for review and approval based on a defined workflow. The eBuilder processes module takes ball and court functionality and puts it in a collaborative cloud-based environment. Every organization has business processes already, whether it's approving and routing change orders, RFIs, and many of these translate directly into eBuilder processes. Some of the typical ones, like I said, are RFIs, invoices, inspection reports, project status updates, and many more. So what's the value in using this module? Why do we use the processes module? Well, first, it brings organization and consistency to your team. We know that all RFIs are responded to properly because they follow the predefined workflow. Onboarding a new team member, locating closeout files at the end of a project, whatever it is, becomes much easier when eBuilder acts as a single point of truth. And ultimately, this organization and consistency translates into efficiency for your team. There's no need to go hunt down whose desk an invoice is sitting on or where the inspector's report from last week is. It's all captured in eBuilder and readily available to all appropriate parties. This frees up your team to do more with less. Now your PMs, directors, etc., can spend their time mitigating risks or managing unforeseen circumstances instead of wasting time compiling and chasing documentation. So now you're probably like, Dan, I know what a process is. We use processes all the time. When are you going to get to the good stuff? So this brings me to process automation, where it gets even better. There are things you can do to supercharge your processes to squeeze even more value out of the system. So what do we mean by process automation? We mean optimizing the configuration of your processes in ways that reduce duplicate entry, eliminate manual reconciliation of data from different sources, reduce churn and confusion by implementing a familiar system. Even though we're using eBuilder, we can still produce documents with the same format as before. And lastly, we want to automate our system so it promotes timely processing of information. Let's use eBuilder to help manage items that are often delayed or even worse, forgotten. Okay, by now you might be saying, this sounds great, Dan. How do we do this? Well, today we're going to review 3 components you can use to optimize your organization's processes. The first is data field assignments. I've been implementing data field assignments for 5.5 years now, and I'm really excited for Paulina to show you how it works. Data field assignments allow us to push and pull information from different areas of the product, eliminating the need to re-enter it or go look it up somewhere else. At its core, we're assigning data to a field. Data field assignment, easy enough. It also allows you to run calculations and formulas on certain field types. So this example might sound familiar to many of you. I once worked in an organization that needed to provide monthly updates on their projects. 3 different people would manually compile 3 different reports with data that almost perfectly overlapped. We were able to totally eliminate this effort, this manual effort, by implementing a monthly update process that used data field assignments to push and pull data to the project details. The best part is that the PM only had to update what changed in the current month. When we kick off the process, We pull the information from last month using data field assignments right into that update process. The PM makes any updates. Maybe we moved from the design phase to the construction phase. And then we push those updates back to the project details tab. Next, we have an automated report that adds a few cost and schedule metrics, and we're done. That's just one example of the power of data field assignments. Paulina is going to show you another. The next component we'll review is mail merges. Over the years, I've probably built 50 or so mail merges. Mail merges allow you to map information from eBuilder into a familiar template. So at the end of the day, an eBuilder process can generate a Word document or a PDF in a format that people are used to, maybe even before eBuilder was around in your organization. Just recently, I implemented a contractor pay app process for reviewing and approving pay apps. And this isn't always an easy transition, especially for an accounting team that has received paper hard copies in a particular format that's been around for longer than I've been alive. But being able to mail merge a document that looks the same way as it did on paper really helped instill confidence in the team and promote adoption of the system. Ultimately, now this client is processing construction pay apps faster than they used to in the past. And lastly, we're going to walk you through process escalations. So I'm sure many here can relate to designing and configuring the perfect process. But a process is only useful if the actors are responding in a timely manner. What good is an RFI process if an architect isn't responding to the contractor? And the question becomes, how do we leverage the system to help manage this? This is where process escalations come in. Process escalations allow us to notify or even add actors when certain criteria is met on a process instance. Here's an example. We can add an escalation rule to re-notify the process actor if our pay app instance hasn't moved in 3 days. And that's the system's way of saying, hey buddy, we gotta get this contractor paid within 30 days. Let's keep it moving over here. And we can even go one step further and add an additional escalation rule to pull in the director as an actor on that process if it hasn't moved in 7 days. This thing hasn't moved in a whole week. Let's pull in the director to push this along, and then they can get what their team is needed. We like to implement these escalation rules, especially in processes that have contractual due dates, where maybe you need to respond to an RFI in a certain amount of days, or you're processing invoices or contract changes in certain durations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paulina to walk you through a few examples and show you how to configure these in eBuilder.
So work smarter, not harder. I'm sure you guys have heard that phrase multiple times, but it rings particularly true to automation. So automation just takes the work that you're already doing and just makes it more efficient. So for these examples, I'm going to use the RFI process just because I feel like most people listening have already dealt with an RFI in the past. So I'm going to start with data field assignments. So a good use case of this is actually what happened to my client in the past, right? So as you know, during RFI process, there's different revisions that go back and forth sometimes. So what happened to my client is that one of the revisions for a spec got lost somewhere in the middle, right? So they weren't keeping track of all the revisions. And now the contractor built out the spec to something, an older model rather than new one. So something as small as like a revision for this process would have caught that. So even though it's small, it can have a huge impact. So I wanted to show you guys how to actually set this up. So if you can meet me in the eBuilder screen, I'm going to start off here in the setup, and I'm going to go to processes and manage processes. And this is the screen that pops up. And all you want to do is find your process. So in this case, we're going to work on the RFI. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. From here, go to the workflows. Find the workflow that you want to work on. In this particular case, it's going to be the version 1.0. And then design the workflow. So here, I'm sure if any of you have worked on processes, you've seen this screen before. This is just the workflow. And in this case, because we want the revision to be anytime the architect sends it to the initiator, that's when we want the revision counter to increase by 1. So because this is the action coming from the architect step, we want to open this up, and this is where we're actually going to put our data field assignment. So go ahead and go to properties. Now you see here, there's a lot of information up top, but I really want to draw your eyes to the very bottom of the screen. There's this chart here, and this is where you would input your actions. And I've already pre-created some of this just for time purposes, but this is where you would add an action. So I've already have them existing, and we want this data field assignment to be in the revision step. So I'm going to go ahead and open up and edit this revise step. And once again, there's a lot of information up top here, but I want to draw your eyes to the bottom of the screen where it says add assignment. So here's where you actually pick your data fields of what you want the data field assignment to be. So in this case, we're working on the revision counter. So I'm just going to assign this to the revision counter field, and then also same thing for the assignment expression. So I chose my fields. I'm going to go ahead and hit insert. And now, because when we take the step, we want it to increase by 1, it's really simple. Just hit +1. It's a very simple formula, but that'll allow it to actually increase the counter. So go ahead and save. Now you see it shows up on the bottom here. One more time, you're going to save. And now you can see that increased by 1. And now there's a data field assignment attached to this action. And once again, go ahead and hit save. Now, I cannot stress this enough. If there's one thing that you take from this training, is to make sure to always remember to publish. I've been in so many situations where clients have built these beautiful processes, and then they just walk away from their computer and it refreshes and everything gets lost. So you want to make sure that you're always publishing your changes. So I'm going to go ahead and publish. And now at this point, it is now active in the process. So I'm going to show you a real life example of this, and I've already queued up a project process instance. So the way you would get there is you would just go to your project and go to the processes tab and find your RFIs. So in this example, we're going to use RFI 4 because it's in that architect respond step that I was discussing earlier. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this instance. So as you can see here, the revision counter here is now 2. So I'm going to take the action. Remember, we put it on the revise step. I'm going to take this action. Now it's going to prompt me to comment, because obviously if you're sending a revision, you want to put, you need more information. You want to give whoever submitted it more information to why you're sending it to them to revise. And go ahead and hit revise. And now it's moving along in the step. So I actually went ahead and built out a report to show what that would look like on the entire project. So this is already pre-built, but you can build and adjust to whatever data field assignment you want. But in this case, as you can see, I have a revision counter here. So you can keep track of everything on the project. So you see the fourth RFI that I used had the 2 revisions. So if I was to rerun this report, see how now increased to 3. So this is a great way on the entire project that you can take a look at it. Now imagine in my client's instance, if he had this information and just simply can keep track of the amount of revisions, now they wouldn't come across this problem because you can keep track of everything. So I think that's, even though it is a small data field assignment, it is still very impactful in an organization. I'm going to switch back over to the PowerPoint.
And to reiterate what Paulina said there, so as you could see, the data field assignments are configured at the action. So it's important to identify where in the process these assignments should take place. And in Paulina's scenario, it was when the architect took the revise action, we updated the revision counter by 1.
Exactly. So I'm going to move on to talk about mail merges now. So Dan briefly covered what mail merges are. So they're really just a printout of the data currently in view. So you can have many mail merges on one process, or you can have as easy as just one. In this RFI instance, as you can see, there's only one mail merge. So in this particular example, we're going to use it to store historical data. So imagine you're during the project closeout phase of your project, and you need to keep track of all of the different RFIs that are in there. So currently, if you don't have a mail merge, how you would do that is you would actually open up every process instance and print it out and save it somewhere on your computer. So as you can see, imagine like 2 or 3 is not bad, but imagine these in the hundreds. Now you have a lot of work to do there. So mail merge step is just an automation of that. So it takes whatever information is in the process instance and just creates a PDF or a Word document with it. So, and then you can actually choose the folder it lives in an eBuilder. So you could take it once it goes through that step, it'll just go to the folder that you chose in the document and store it all in there. So now at the end of your project, in the closeout phase, you could just go into that one folder and pull all the information you need out of there. So mail merges can vary in complexity. I'm going to show you a very simple one. I'm going to go back to the eBuilder screen. And if you can meet me in the same place that we were before. So setup, process, under the administration tools, go to manage processes. And I just reopened that same workflow that we were already working on. So at this point, you also, same thing, you just design the workflow. And now you see, the one cool thing also is that the automation step is actually going to be an oval step. So if you're having, this is a small process, but if you have an enormous process with a bunch of mail merges, it's a great way to draw your eye to where the automation steps are. And in order to input that mail merge in there, you just do the same thing. You go to right-hand click, go to properties, and now you're in that step. So a couple things you're gonna have to fill out is the step name, the step type. With the mail merge template, for time purposes, I've actually already built out a mail merge template for you guys to see, just because it would take time. There's different variations. There could be, this one's very simple, but it could be 30 pages if you're working on a permanent application mail merge. So it can vary in how big they are, but I just chose to do one just for the purpose of time. So you just select your mail merge. And remember how I mentioned earlier that you can choose the destination folder in the Documents tab where these PDF documents will now live. This is where you would do that. So you have archive mail merges. It's clicked yes. And right on the bottom here, there is a destination folder. This is where you would choose where you want this to be. So there is a link here that says lookup. Go ahead and click that. And then you find your project. So in this case, I have process webinar example. And then I'm just going to choose the folder that states RFIs. And now every time a mail merge goes through, the output will be in that folder. And another thing I want to just really quickly draw your attention to as well is that you can send these to different people. So you can send it to the process initiator here. You can do it to different actors, roles. I think another thing that goes really unnoticed is that you can actually send it to external recipients. So imagine you're dealing with a contractor that's not always an e-builder. Every time this goes to a finished step, they can get a PDF printout sent to their email. So however they choose to store their documents, they can just pull it out from their email, which makes it easier. They don't have to log into eBuilder per se. So at that point, you just go ahead, once you fill this all out, you go ahead and save. And once again, what I mentioned before, publish, publish, publish. Always remember to publish this. So I'm gonna go ahead and publish. And then I'm gonna show you how that looks on a real life process. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my project processes. Way you would get there, same way as you find your project and go to processes. So I already have one queued up for the GC review step. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And at this point, all the action is the complete. So now once this complete action is taken, it's now going to go through the mail merge. So I'm just going to go ahead and complete, take action. And now it's moving along. And I want to show you, remember how we picked the destination folder? Now I'm going to go within your project, go ahead and go to the Documents tab. And I've already pre-selected this folder, but as you can see, now there are all your RFIs here. And I'm going to open one up just to show you what that looks like. So now because we built it out this way, you have the name, RFI, everything, all the process instant details are now in here. And they can stay in there, and at the end of your project, you choose to do whatever you want with them. So that's just obviously a simple example of a mail merge. Like Dan mentioned, they could get very complex. There could be different use cases for it, but that's just pretty much a simple way to do it. So I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint here.
Right, and so some of you might be asking, it's just an RFI, do I need a mail merge? And you might not. Your organization might not require it, but Paulina's client required a more formal solution. And at the end of their closeout process, they remove their external users from the project. So before that happens, this gives the contractor a good way to go into a folder, download all, and then move that to their archive. And now what we didn't cover in this was how to actually build the mail merge template, which happens in Microsoft Word. We could spend an entire training on that alone, but something we can definitely help you with. So if you have any questions on that, you can reach out through our EB Connect tool.
Yeah, absolutely. It varies on the organization. So, and how you want to build out your mail merges. So like Dan said, I could spend an entire hour just showing you guys how these are built. But for the sake of time, I just wanted to already pre-populate a template in there. So I want to move on, and the last topic I want to cover is escalations, which happens to actually be my favorite one. So I'm sure I'm not the only one that's been in situations where, you know, you have a process, part of the process that, and now you need to hand it off to a coworker. And Dan covered, you hand it off to a coworker, and then you kind of have to wait, and you wait until they're done. And then what happens is you have to walk over and constantly ask, like, hey, is this done? Are you finished with this? Can I take this back? And what eBuilder did is eliminated the need to do that. Now you can auto prompt the step actor when they've been sitting on this process for too long. So this is a really quick way, and it's such an efficient way to do it, and it's also very easy to set up. So I'm going to show you in eBuilder how that is set up. So we're right back in the same screen as we were before. And this, you go to Setup and Manage Processes, and I found the same workflow that we've been working on. So as you can see on the bottom here, there are escalation rules already set up. I've pre-populated some of them, but how to add a rule is just right here on the right. Just click Add Rule. And this is where you choose how many days and etc. things like that nature, how often you want this person to be reminded of this. So in this case, we're going to do every, let's say, every 3 days. And then you also have the option of doing either on the process start. So let's say, you know, this RFI has been for after a week, it's been started. You want to make sure to remind the people to kind of act on it, or you could do it on the step start, also on due dates as well. You have a couple options there. So in this case, we're just going to do the step start. And conditions are, Dan also covered this, like let's say we have a change order. Now, every time that change order goes over $10,000, you want to make sure that the director of construction is notified. So this is where you would set up that condition to notify him that every time it goes over a certain amount, instead of the next actor, it goes to the director for them to act on it, just because it's a large change order. And here you also need to pick who you want to notify. So in that particular case, it would be the director of construction. But in this case, you want to maybe notify the process initiator. So you just select it and move it over. Now, another really cool thing is actually you can re-notify them. So you could be extra annoying if you want to be to your coworkers, and you can re-notify them after like a day, 2 days, or if it's something like Dan mentioned that is time conscious and it needs to be done on a certain day, you can actually switch and notify them every few hours, every hour, depending on how often you want to do that. But we're going to do that, this one, every 1 day after the 3rd day. And then you just go ahead and save. And now you see that escalation rule has been set up here for this workflow. Just keep in mind, you can do up to 5 on a workflow. Can't do any more than that, but 5 is usually plenty for examples for escalation rules. So that about wraps up the training and the setup portion of it. So I'm just gonna kick it back over to Avi to close this out.
Thanks, Paulina. And Dan, great job. I hope you learned today some components of automating your processes in eBuilder. We talked about data field assignments, automate data flow between areas of eBuilder. We talked about mail merges, automate the generation of files and where they are stored. And finally, escalations, automate holding your team accountable based on key performance indicators. If you have any questions, please let us know on the call or reach out to us after. We're happy to help.